everyone, welcome back to the Stitches and Scribble channel. My name is Erin and I have a tutorial for you today on how to do a garter stitch edging on a washcloth. So if you haven't seen previous tutorials in this series, I did a washcloth series for both knit and crochet here on my channel, and we're just kind of wrapping those up with some fun ways to add a border. This is just garter stitch, so basic knit stitch. So you're going to learn how to pick up stitches along the edge of a piece and create a border that looks just like this. I am filming on a new camera today, so this is the first time I've seen what it looks like set up kind of in my podcast setup. So let me know what you think of the new camera, new settings, all that stuff. It definitely has a very different lens than my old one. So it's a little weird to see myself looking like this on camera when I'm used to my old setup, but now you can see more of my background. But yeah, just wanted to explain the difference in why my camera looks a little funky in this one, but we're going to dive right into the tutorial. All right, for this tutorial, you're going to need a couple of different materials. First, you're going to need an already knit or crocheted washcloth. You can use either kind. This happens to be the one from one of my previous tutorials on knitting the moss stitch as a washcloth. You're also going to need whatever needle size you used to knit the washcloth originally. Mine are circular needles. They don't have to be circular needles. They just need to be wide enough to accommodate the long edge of your washcloth. You're also going to need a contrast color of yarn. I'm just using this plain white. It is still the sugar and cream cotton yarn that I used for the original tutorial, just in a different color. So I pulled out some yarn to get started, and all you're going to need to be able to do this is know how to do the garter stitch, so just all knit stitches, pick up stitches in an existing piece, and cast off. So if you haven't done picking up stitches or casting off, you can learn here, but you should have learned casting off in the actual washcloth tutorial. Let's start with picking up some stitches. So you'll see, depending on which edge you start with, that you have stitches that run along the very edge of your piece. Depending on which edge it is, they're going to look slightly different, but really all you need to keep in mind is just to keep your stitches kind of evenly spaced, and you should do fine. We're going to start with a slip knot, just like we would to normally start knitting. Then you're going to take your piece and one end of your needles, or one needle, depending on what kind you're using. You're going to insert your needle into your work right in the corner, then insert that slip knot stitch and pull it through the stitch on your piece. This part can be a little bit tricky. Then we're going to kind of just keep doing that. So you're going to insert your needle into the next stitch. Then you're going to wrap your yarn and push it through. So kind of like knitting, but instead of having all of your stitches on another needle, you're just picking them up from the edge of the piece. So again, we'll do that slowly. Insert your needle, wrap your yarn, and pull it through. We're going to do that along the whole edge of the piece. Just this side though, we don't need to continue around the corner. Sometimes the stitches can get a little tight, but don't worry. Once you pull them through, you can loosen them up. Just keep going all the way across. This gets a lot easier with practice as well. And depending on what edge you started with, the stitches you're picking up from could look a little different, but as long as you're just kind of evenly spacing the places where you pick up, you should do just fine. This happens to be a cast off. Is this cast off or cast on? I think this is the cast on edge, so those stitches are pretty easy to see. Whoop. Pick those back up and get one more. There you go. So now you've picked up all of your stitches on one edge of your fabric. So from here, we're just going to knit 2 rows in plain old garter stitch. Just knitting every stitch across. And you can adjust how many rows you do. I'm just only doing 2 to keep it pretty narrow of an edging. In fact, instead of 2 rows, I'm actually only going to do 1. But you can do 2 if you would like to. I feel like I'm constantly fighting a cough when I do these tutorials. Oh well. Alright, I have completed 1 row of my garter stitch. Now I'm actually going to cast off this row so that we just get 1 row of that knit stitch. So to cast off, you're going to knit 1, knit a second one, pull the first loop over the second loop, just like you would have done for a regular cast off. You could absolutely do a stretchy bind off for this if you would like to, but it's not necessary since this is just a washcloth. You could do any bind off you choose, as far as I know. I'm sure there's ones out there I haven't tried yet. We're just going to continue along the edge. It gives you this nice little border. Adding a border to washcloths like this is a really great way to kind of unify washcloths that are different colors. So if you've made a set with a bunch of different yarns that you just had extras of, giving them a trim all in the same color is a great way to make them look like a set, if you are so inclined. It's also just a great way to use up some scrap yarn to add a pop of color to a project. Getting close to the edge. I'm going to be doing all of my washcloths with a white edging for this series, but there will be a couple different edging varieties coming out as tutorials, so make sure you check back. I'll do 1 more knit one and 2 crochet ones as well. Last one, and a final stitch. All right, so depending on the orientation of your stitches, at this point you could trim this yarn and just start your next section with a new piece of yarn. Since I want to do this edge next, I'm actually just going to keep going. So I'm going to leave that one stitch on my needle, and I'm going to pick up stitches going this way. When you're working on the side of a knit piece, it can be a little bit trickier to figure out where to pick up stitches. Whoop, bumped my tripod there. But again, you just kind of want to keep your spacing even. You're going to pick up stitches just like you did on that first row. Can be a little tricky. I generally find some sort of consistency in where I'm seeing loops and just pick the same type of loop every time I pick up a stitch. You can count if you want your sides to be exactly even, but for something like a washcloth, it doesn't really matter if they're exactly the same. So just to show you, I'm working into those little horizontal bars that form between every row. Sometimes you can work into the more knotted looking section. It's up to you. There are, of course, ways to knit so that you have a cleaner edge, but since this is more of a beginner tutorial, we don't have those. Just keep picking up stitches all the way down. Getting the hand position right to pick up stitches can be a little tricky. I just kind of pretend that the side I'm picking up from is my non-dominant hand needle, and otherwise just kind of knit as you normally would. One more in the corner. There we go. So then this is what it looks like when you pick up your second side. You're going to repeat this process all the way around until you have all 4 sides done. And we're just following the same process. So for my example, as I did with the first side, I'm just knitting 1 row. So I'll knit back this direction, all in knit stitches, cast off in this direction, and then I'm set up to pick up stitches on this side again, just like I did over here. So doing just 1 row for your edging will set you up to go in the same direction each time. You could do this with odd numbers if you did it with even numbers. So let's say I had picked up my stitches going this way here and did 1, 2 rows and cast off. I'd be over here. So then I could pick up stitches, do 1, 2, cast off, and I'd be back in this corner again. So odd numbers are going to work a little better for not having to cut your yarn repeatedly, but you can do however many rows you want. You just might have to start your next side with a new piece of yarn depending on what number you do. I'm going to go ahead and finish this all the way around and show you what it looks like at the very end. This is what your piece should look like when you're done. So if you have that last loop, you can just cut it and pull it. Whoop, that's the wrong string. Pull it through. Just like so. The only downside of this type of an edging is you can see all of the pickup loops on one side kind of inside of the main body of the piece, but the other side will usually look clean. Once you get to this point, you can go ahead and weave in your ends and be done with your border. And that's it for our garter stitch edging. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. And I hope that it's a fun way for you to add a little bit of pizzazz to your finished knit pieces. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below so that you can be notified of all my crafty content right here on YouTube. And if you'd like to follow me on other social media sites, that information will be in the description box below. Thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye everyone!